All right. Just set this up. There it is. All right. Now, what's going on? What's going on? There I am. All right, people. All right. Un momento. Watch together with friends or with a group. Whoa, what is that about? ये कौन सा नया Netflix and chill option है? Should I don't know whether I should click that. Should I? Shouldn't I? How does that work? Let's just share it. Abe yaar. Come on. There you go. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juan Layth, bienvenidos a todos. Bakhair ragle, khushamadid people. And swagatam, swagatam. I'm just waiting for this to... Why is that? What is going on? ¿Qué pasa? Why is this saying it's sharing it, but it's... What is this? What? This conspiracy, you know? This conspiracy. So, mi gente, what's going on? What's going on? I'm well, lillahi alhamd, I'm well. I'm just trying to see if that has successfully been shared or not. Or if there's a conspiracy against me, folks. Let's see. Let's see. Ah, it's been shared. You. Facebook teasing me. What is going on? Waqim. Rather interesting name. Waqim says, La ba's. La ba's wa la ba'us. What's Claire Jones, Hamad, Muslim man. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum wa marhaban. Look at this Muslim man. We have Muslim man online today. All right. And how can we help you, sir? I am Muslim man. You know, Muslim man. That just sounds so... it's like, what is about to happen here? Waqim saying, my parents butchered my name. Waqim, they definitely did. They just made up the name. They just go, what should we call him? You know, shall we go with the traditional name that exists? I don't know. Names, Abdul Rahman. Shall we go with Ahmed, Muhammad? Shall we go with the slicker name like, I don't know, something Salim, Samir, I don't know, they're trying to Wasim. They go, oh, nah, forget it. Just make one up. Whack 'em. We're going to whack 'em anyway, so what the... You know, that's an interesting discussion, folks. People need to pay attention to the names that they choose for their children. I mean, having a name like let's say, having a name like Anus in the West, spelt anus. I've actually seen that. I'm not making this up, people. You know, if I was making Toba, have I ever lied before? That I would lie today. I've seen the name anus. I've thought, what? Anus. What is this? Yeah, they've had the name seriously. Now, why are you setting that person up for what is this, like a kind of euthanasia? Longitudinal assisted suicide. Anus. I mean, you've got the Arabic name As. I mean, with all due respect, you do not want to name your child living in the West As, because they're going to go like As. I mean, they're not going to say it with an Ain. Let's be real, people. They're not going to go As. They're going to just say As. Like, what kind of... Oh. And then you give them the first name, Fakhar. Fakhar? Fakhar what? Oh. Oh, rather. This is why we need to think these things through. We need to kind of like focus. You know, the problem is nobody reads the Quran. It says afala taqilun. Use the akal, you know, this one. You say Mr. Fakhar. Mr. Fakhar? No. Fakharas? No. This one not nice. You know, this one big problem. So, toba. People need to think these things through, people. They need to kind of focus. Okay? So, yeah. I was in Pakistan once, and I mean, I was in Pakistan for a period of time, but this one time I came across somebody in a village, and his name was Maqtul, which meant murdered. And I thought, what? I thought maybe his name is Maqbul or something, and I've misheard it. So I said, is it Maqbul? He said, no, Maqtul. I thought, what? Maqtul? Were they hinting something? Was it a threat when you were born? Anta Maqtul. Anyway. Right, let's see what the folks are saying. Has your discussion with Vidu made you rethink your ideas? Or was it a bad day in the office? Ooh, spooky. Hi, my discussion with VidoVids was really good. I thought I enjoyed the discussion. I think, though, if I'm going to be honest, I think it's a good point to begin tonight's session. Evaluating some of that discussion, I think as an observation, I'd like to make an observation. You're observing, you know. I do observe, you know. So, the observation, people, is that, you see, the problem with, I think, atheism, let me rephrase that. A problem with atheism, ex-Muslims included in that, is that, you see, they ironically have substituted dogma for dogma. But that I find many people, and I find this with people in general, regardless of people of religion or the lack thereof, that they are people of dogma. They're not a very philosophical people. That I find this, unfortunately, with most people. And ex-Muslims or atheists in general aren't much different. Just because they've thought about religion, which I applaud them for, and they've been critical towards religion, and I applaud them for that. But it's naive to assume that they are very well balanced necessarily in their analysis. So now discussing, for example, in that discussion with VidoVids, the fact that there was this failure to recognize, to even just recognize this, that when you say truth, you do understand that there is an arbitrary parameter to what you're saying. Now, the fact that that wouldn't even resonate, to me, just showed like a sense of dogma. You see, because first of all, I discussed in that, I said, just coming to that discussion with VidoVids, I mentioned that when you say things like, do you believe Islam is true? Now, he said like, do you believe, yeah, he said, I believe that was the question. It may have been worded slightly different, but do you believe this to be true? And I said, well, you see, it's interesting because what does that mean? Truth. Because do I believe it to be true? I do believe it to be true. Now, how are you, and where does that question go? Because you can only assess something, a truth claim can only make sense if it can be assessed. And how do you assess something like this? This isn't a maths test that you can assess it. What is it? And they said, no, well, actually you can assess religion. And I said, well, how? How would you assess religion? Because you can assess it through historicity, and the overwhelming evidence does demonstrate that the Prophet Muhammad did exist. Okay? I mean, that's something you could assess, possibly through archaeology and sociological, historical kind of findings. Okay, so you put that aside. What are we saying now? What next? I mean, how do you assess something? You see, and the failure to accept this, or to even recognize this. And then we had this discussion on, you see, they said, well, does it correlate to, because there's many things in the Quran that don't correlate with our sense of reality. Right now, and I said that's true, but how are you reading the Quran? Are you reading it as just prose? Because would you read poetry in the same way? Would you say poetry is not true? Does that and the person said, well, and I said things like, would you read art as not being true? Because you see, it's a non-meaningful statement. It doesn't mean much in that context. Those contexts are not assessed by the term true. Yes, I mean, in some sense, they could be. You could have a complete mythology. So, for example, somebody could say, well, there was a religion that began 20 years ago. And you say, well, actually, historically, we can't ascertain this. So, okay, so there's a claim of historicity. Or the person could say something absolutely, categorically incorrect, let's say. Let's say they said, mathematically, the religion said, oh, 1 and 1 equals 4, and we mean this literally, and you say, well, that doesn't add up. Okay, fine. Or they make claims of science or of assessment that you assess. But when religions don't speak about things like that, so when a religion speaks about the soul, this is not, I mean, till date, this is not an accessible statement. You could say, well, I accept it or I reject it. But to say that's not true is actually quite dogmatic and arrogant. Because how do you assess truth on something that is unattainable or inaccessible as we stand? So, because the soul could just mean consciousness. I mean, it could mean consciousness. Or it could mean something else according to other people. But my point is, if you're going to say, well, the religion is speaking of an afterlife, well, an afterlife, as of our standpoint, is inaccessible. So how can you put a truth claim to it? I mean, you could say, I believe in it, or I don't believe in it. That's fine. But you can't measure it. And then we spoke about things like, you see, I mentioned things like idealism to highlight to them that, look, our measurements in and of themselves are very limited. And we have to at least be honest. And I mentioned things like, you know, could you even, and we got onto this thing about sound and music, and I was actually quite surprised that this, you know, it was a basic thing of really physics and science, but it wasn't being acknowledged in that dialogue, that sound isn't actually, it doesn't have a reality the way, it's just how we're interpreting vibrations. It does not have an objective reality. So the fact that this statement of mine is very difficult to digest shows either ignorance with science, or it just shows a kind of very rigid dogma. Because once, you see, this world, truly speaking, if we're objectively speaking, is colourless. It's soundless. It doesn't have sound. It's insipid. It's, you know, the world is nothing like what we are perceiving it to be, if we are speaking from a position of external objectivity. So let's just be honest. I mean, the world is not how any of us see it. So I mentioned that, you see, and you wouldn't expect God, like, let's say if you do accept the transcendent, you wouldn't expect God to address the world how it truly is. Because in its true objectivity, we can't relate to it. It would be meaningless for us, because we would think it's absurd, but it's actually the truth. So I mean, I think that was important to address that, but I do find, if I be honest, and I love honesty, मुनाफिकत हमसे नहीं होती यार. You know, I just can't be a hypocrite. I can be many things, but not a hypocrite. This one big problem, you know. I find that that many ex-Muslims, they too have now become tribalistic with this new identity of ex-Muslims. And the truth is that they have become, not at this stage, but this is the beginning of a new Frankenstein. You know, it's like how Nietzsche said that, beware when you fight monsters, lest you shall become a monster. And I fear that this is the beginning of the very thing they set out to combat. And that was dogma. So that's my perspective. That said, I do accept that religion, you'll probably get, you know, if I suppose atheists compared to people who follow religion are it's disproportionate ratio, because the majority of the world follows some kind of a religion. So it can't be accurately assessed. But if you were to take a random kind of pick, your atheist will definitely be somebody who is at least more analytic towards religion and philosophy than your common religious person. Because that's true, that religion, unquestionably institutionalized religion, definitely pushes dogma. I mean, it doesn't just result in dogma, it pushes dogma, it peddles dogma. So that's its bread and butter, dogma. Although atheists are meant to be people very antithetical to dogma, I fear that they too will just end up with another version, an alternate version of dogma. On that note, I would like to, Talib had actually asked me, I'm not sure if he's tuned in, but right, somebody's asked about veganism. I'll come to that in a moment. You see, Talib had asked a question about what I'd said in my discussion with VidoVids about meaning, and just if I could elaborate on that slightly. You see, what I was saying is that to atheists, if everything is simply the coherence of randomized matter and phenomenon, that's all it is. So randomized phenomenon has simply coherently merged and fused together, then meaning has no meaning. You understand? Everything collapses. And this is my assessment as somebody who does have faith. I fear that, you see, where you began by saying, look, religion doesn't make sense, so I will seek the truth. And the truth is something which ought to make sense. But if the truth in the end is nothing, there is just nothingness, which means there is no meaning to anything. You see, the answer to absurdity cannot just be the absence of an answer. That is not an answer. That's just that there is nothing. But the fact that we are trying to seek meaning and seek truth, to me, demonstrates that there must be meaning. Hence we can seek it and find it. And this is the argument that we call the intelligibility of being itself. Being with a capital B here. That the intelligibility of being demonstrates that meaning must carry value. There must be meaning in stuff. You understand? So, I don't know if you guys, if that makes any sense to you, or if, you know, I don't know, my pre-workout drink is just still running. But nevertheless, I hope that makes some sense. That, you see, when people problematize religion, they are looking for the truth, meaning that which equals, there must be something meaningful that adds up. If that result is simply that there is nothing, that there is no answer, that it's all random, then the concept of meaning itself becomes random and drops, that there is no meaning. That meaning in and of itself becomes redundant. So it turns back on itself. I don't know if you guys can understand this. या मैं कोई ज़्यादा ही पहुंची हुई चीज़ हूँ. Or am I just on a level of my own? Am I just at expert master level here? Anyway, what is going on, people? What is Osama? You're doing it. That's it. If anybody's guys, admin, if anybody's trolling, you know what to do. Mock and block. That's it. Right, I was asked a question. I said I'll get back to it. What was it? On why God allowed it? Saying God allowed it doesn't allow. I don't know what that's about. Plants suffer too. Recent studies show plants are aware that they are being eaten. Oh, don't eat me. should we become vegan? Is this the question? Should we become vegan? Is that the question? I'm not sure what the question was. If the question was, should we become vegan? You see, I don't necessarily believe that we should become vegan. You know, as the poem says, that वो शख्स अच्छा लगा साफ दिल की बात थी साफ कह दी. You know, the person looked good, it was a matter of the heart, so I said it straight. हमसे मुनाफकत हो नहीं सकती. See, it's difficult being a hypocrite. The problem is that you've got to, you see, when it comes to these things, I eat meat, carnivorous. Do I feel that it is wrong to eat meat? I don't feel it is wrong to eat meat. Oh, vegan attack! Because look, because the way the world has been created, it's the thus decreed nature that the animals will just eat each other. Ab hum kaun hai yaar? How can we disrupt the flow of nature? It's ye parampara is coming. This tradition is coming since evolution. Now, it's not befitting for us to disrupt this tradition. So we need to kind of just go with it. Tuck into that burger. I had a discussion with I don't know whether it was a vegetarian or a vegan at one point, and and I said, well, you see, if you say that we shouldn't eat meat because of suffering, then I ask you, should we proactively prevent animals from getting eaten by other animals? Now this one stuck, you know, this one, this one big problem. Oh, ethics. Should I starve the wolves? Starve the tigers and the lions? Oh, so the thing is that, you see, you kind of get stuck. So I say, look, don't worry about it. Because look, I understand that there's this thing of, they say, suffering, and I don't have an answer to that. But I also recognize that there is no way out of this. You see, you can't prevent nature from eating other animals, eating other parts of nature. It's nature. And even if you could prevent it, if you tried to prevent it, you would just ruin the entire ecology. You'd just ruin everything, and it would get out of control. You couldn't, because you see, you would either harm the carnivores by starving them. Now you could say that we would supply, imagine we could generate enough artificial meat to feed all the carnivores on Earth. The Earth's balance would actually, I mean, the ecological balance would actually be, I think, catastrophic. I think you couldn't just, it would just result in overpopulation of certain creatures, and because there's a balance in the kind of pecking order of things, and evolution has evolved in that way. So you see, because it's a thought experiment, that imagine we could produce enough artificial meat to feed all the carnivores on Earth. Would that be a wise thing to do? let's just say as a thought experiment, I think the whole thing would go crazy. I think you'd actually mess the entire ecological system up, because it works on a certain way that for nature to operate, for animals to thrive, they need to have the survival instinct. You see, if the survival instinct is not in play, it would actually destroy, because animals they're not they are on a conscious spectrum, but they're not conscious like us. They're not kind of sitting down thinking, hey, what should I do next week? They don't work in that way. And if you don't believe me, you should check out the great the mice utopian experiment that I spoke about previously. You see, that was a very fascinating experience where a person tried to create a paradise for a researcher tried to, in an experiment, tried to create a utopia for mice. And I think he began with 8 mice, and he had plenty of capacity, plenty of provisions, food, he had water, things were always renewed, fresh. I think there were 8 mice to kind of mate and copulate and reproduce, and it worked amazingly in the beginning, because the mice were just like, wow, this is awesome, all right. And they're reproducing and reproducing and reproducing. But when it reached a certain number, you see, the results were shocking. You should read into it, because the results showed that the mice, their behavior became absolutely abnormal. There was a certain amount of mice, they would refuse to, the mice stopped mating. They weren't interested in mating anymore. The mothers would refuse to take care of the young. The maternal instinct began to die. It began, like, the whole thing is really fascinating. And they started to die off. It was really weird, but and part of it was that they lost the kind of the drive to survive, the willpower to survive, because animals don't work the same way humans work. They are driven by that instinct to survive, and if they don't have an environment that tests that instinct, after a while, I mean, it may be fun for the early first generation, let's say, but as they start to grow up and reproduce, it results in complete debilitation of these species. Cool. With that, let's move on to some other questions, people. What is going on? What is going on? Right, I will be speaking about Sheikh Yasir Qadhi later on in my Masala segment. Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. Sheikh Yasir Qadhi and his recent drama with the Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and in his podcast where he's really just speaking about me at one point, and the other person mentions me by name. And then they just they start to kind of take digs. And the irony is that before Sheikh Yasir Qadhi is doing the very thing he's condemning in that discussion. This is the problem. This is the utter problem, you see. That religion, it has certain people have said, certain philosophers of our recent times have said that, you see, religion, organized religion, institutionalized religion applied just results in hypocrisy. It only makes hypocrites, because that's the nature of institutionalized religion. And you can see that in the phenomenon of Sheikh Yasir Qadhi right now and his scandal. So I'll come to that a bit later on. We'll drop a bit of masala on it. So, but till then, what's going on, people? Right, what is going on, folks? What is going on? Let's take a look at some questions. Right, I've answered that. Right, there was a question to explain idealism, and I suppose I should have explained it when I was explaining the discussion with the ex-Muslims. But idealism, right, why do Frowdy Frubbery said, why do women blur their images on Muzmatch? It's good to know that the Ummah is kept awake with real problems, pressing issues, people. Why do women blur their images on Muzmatch? Now we've all got to open a Muzmatch account just to see what Frowdy Frubbery here is saying. Maybe that blurring is a blessing for you. Because otherwise, you never know. I mean, yeah. So, maybe that's how they're seeing you on the screen, all blurred. And then you actually come through and they're like, what the heck is... So, right, what is going on? What is Muzmatch? So it's Muzmatch the one, people. Is that the one? Is that where it's all happening? Is this... we've got to keep up with the day and age, you see. I feel kind of left out here. Farhan Mia is asking for the second time, what is the Ash'ari creed and how does it differ from the Athari? See, that people, Farhan Mia Saab right here is concerned about Aqidah, whilst you, embarrassment to humanity, are worried about Muzmatch and blurred faces and getting up to all this hanky-panky. Here we have a brother who's concerned about his faith. He's like, well, what is the difference? It's like women blur their face. I couldn't care less. Mia Saab over here, he's saying, I don't care if women blur their faces. I need to know what is the Aqidah of the Ash'ari school, the doctrine, and the doctrine of the Hanbalis. See, Farhan, you need to be on Muzmatch. This is a real guy right here. All the women looking for real men, they say, where are the decent guys gone? The decent guys, they're all too busy discussing why are the faces... sorry, that's the indecent guys. The decent ones are discussing why is the Ash'ari Aqidah and the Hanbali Aqidah, what's going on here? Oh, Lord, have mercy. Have mercy on this ummah. So, right. This one, Nek brother. This one, pious, pious. Pious brother. Let me fold my arms whilst I respond to him. Right, okay, let's answer the question for the brother. He's suffering in... the anxiety is getting to him. Brother's being kept up late at night, pondering over the doctrinal differences between these two theological schools. This is keeping him up, whilst you other losers are being kept up by God knows what kind of forums and websites. Alright, so, Mia Sahib, you see there's the difference, the kind of primal difference between these two is the Athari, which is today a euphemism. Athari is a euphemism for the Hanbali school of Aqidah, which is basically an anthropomorphic school of theology, doctrine, which in essence, if I'm to sum that up for you again, let me, in snob speak, let me dumb this down for you guys. Imagine as a professor with a serious face, this is how you say it. You say, all right guys, let me dumb this down for you. I would love to try that at a lecture. I'd just go, right, so, yes, so the doctrinal differences between these two theological schools, let me dumb this down for you guys. This one, God, body parts. This one, no body parts. So the Hanbali school believes God has, they believe God has body parts. Okay, so it's just a dumb school. I'm going to be honest with you. It's totally stupid. It's for the, what I call the sunshine group. It's for the bottom set, basically. You know, in school you have differentiation, and you have the bottom sets that they just colour in and and they just draw pictures all day. They go, yeah, wow, I got a star, I got a sticker. So the Hanbali school in Aqidah is basically that sunshine group. And then you've got the Ash'aris. I don't think the Ash'ari, if I'm going to be fair, the Ash'aris, I don't think they're 100% spot on, but they're definitely much better than that group, the Hanbali school. The Hanbali, the Ash'aris are probably like in the middle. I would say like, maybe like set 3, set 2 possibly, some of them. But the gifted and talented, the top, in my perspective, were the philosophers. They were in a class of their own. So none of the theologians, I think, could match the philosophers. Because the theologians were always constrained by, they had too many fake parameters that they were trying to match. So the Ash'aris, generally speaking, are more, definitely make sense. I would say probably 95% sense or 90% sense. They definitely, if I was to join one of the groups, I'd definitely join the Ash'ari group in that sense. Broadly speaking, I would align myself with Ash'ari, even though I would disagree on certain things that they say. But my point is, I would, broadly speaking, align myself with that group as opposed to the other sunshine group that believe in God having body parts. Because when they believe in God having body parts, they don't even say he has body parts like a normal human. Astaghfirullah, toba, toba. They give him deformed body parts. I'm not making this up. They believe in stupid things like he has 2 right hands and he has only 2 fingers, I think, and he has like only 1 leg, and that too half a leg. Honestly, that is not, that they've got some picture of some kind of a gremlin. This is not God. They haven't found God yet. But on the bright side, they're excused because it's that group. You see, that group, you just kind of go like, this picture, you drew this. So nice. Okay, that's the bell. Home time. Off you go. Yeah, Ibn Taymiyyah was part of this. I mean, Ibn Taymiyyah he didn't invent it, but he was part of this. But so are all these Saudi Salafis. They're all part of this. They believe in dumb stuff, honestly. They in the 21st century, the Salafi Aqidah cannot stand. It would be ridiculed stupidly. you know, if they try to teach their beliefs openly now, like they do, but I think they're starting to shy away now. Because they're starting to realize that hearing themselves aloud, damn, is that my voice? That does sound stupid. Stupid. So, yeah. Anyway, and this is part of the problem with even Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. He is from this kind of group of thinking. So you have to remember that people that stem from this group of thinking, they will always kind of struggle with the intellectual. Right, what is going on? What is going on? Oh, Ustad Abdul Aziz, ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban. People, a man who truly walks the spiritual path is in our midst. Ustad Abdul Aziz Saraqa. Tasharrafna, Ustad. Right, so those of you that sometimes ask, what should we do for, you know, for that spiritual guidance, that cleansing of the soul, so to speak. And I tell you, I'm not your guy. You're just looking at, somebody drenched in the dunya, drenched in sin. That people like Ustad Abdul Aziz is your kind of guy. Reach out to people like him. Is there a history of Arab supremacism in Islamic history? Ibrahim from Coventry, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Right, now, Arab supremacism. Yeah, there was a history, obviously there was a history. That book, have I got it still here? It's over there now. But if you do want to go through, if you're interested in learning about Arab history, that book, I can't recommend it enough, Arab's A 3,000 Year History. There was something, look, in the past, the way the history of Islam kind of unfolded, you had the Prophet's time, and then after the Prophet's time, you see, Muslims, they weren't, it's not like that they weren't ready, but it's that they, in my understanding, had no idea, or even that doesn't really do it justice. I think, you see, what it is that if you take up the people, the companions, and where Islam came, it was a very humble origin. People who lived in a desert, who lived in the Hijaz, they weren't really on a map worldwide. They weren't. So, you see, within decades, this became a global enterprise. That, you know, decades are not actually that long when you think about it. Within a natural human lifetime, so let's say a child was born in the time of the Prophet. Let's take Abdullah ibn Zubayr as an example. He was the first boy to be born in Medina. He passes away, I believe it's 72, 73 Hijri, around that time. So within his natural lifetime, by the time he's passed away, Islam is a global empire. The not only Muslims, but if we're going to go a layer deeper or closer to the roots, Arabs had come an incredibly far way. I mean, the journey had taken them to great distances, and namely Quraysh, you see, more than anything else. And when we say Quraysh were truly, I mean, even till today, if you're going to look at, let's say one looks at Muslims as a case study, an anthropological case study, Quraysh till today, if we're looking at them from an evolution perspective, have, you know, made huge, I mean, astronomical strides in survival. Even till today, Quraysh are given a different plateau. Like Sayyids, all this Sayyid thing that goes on today. It's just Quraysh, isn't it? What else is it? You know, and if one was to think that they really did come a long way, you know, from a purely evolutionary perspective. If you're just looking at this devoid of religion and just from an evolutionary anthropological perspective, the tribe of Quraysh has been incredibly successful. I mean, in its early stages as the Bani Umayyah and the Abbasids, and then the Abbasids, and even then coming right through. I mean, I know you've had the Ottomans, but still, you know, the Sayyid kind of status, and then till today, this whole thing of Shurafa and Sadat. So I feel that's an interesting perspective. The thing about Arabs' supremacy, this did happen, definitely happened, definitely. Unquestionably through the time of Bani Umayyah, that there was this Arab, it was a very pure Arab thing in the time of Bani Umayyah, and non-Arabs were not really, I mean, they were okay, that they didn't, they wouldn't necessarily oppress you for being a non-Arab, but they wouldn't give you importance either. That said, they wouldn't even give importance to other Arabs. So the interesting thing is, if you look at the whole Mawali culture, so in the time of Bani Umayyah, of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and these people, when they started to create new cities like Wasit in modern day Iraq, these cities, they would have them inhabited by people. And what they start, because a lot of new Muslims and people started to move in who were Persians or spoke other languages, they banned any other language in certain cities, that you must only speak Arabic. And then in cities like Wasit and in certain other towns, they actually banned that you could not live there unless you were an Arab, or you had to affiliate with a tribe. Hence, you got a lot of this wala, these mawali later on. A lot of them weren't actually slaves. You know, you get this assumption that a freed slave had wala. So for example, I was, I don't know, let's say I was enslaved now by some tribe of, let's say, as a slave to somebody who belonged to the tribe of Tamim. Now, when I became free, I would carry the name sometimes At-Tamimi. They call that wala in Arabic. But you will see all the people had this wala. Most of the people had this wala in their nasab, in their lineage. It didn't mean all of them were slaves. It was that they imposed these rules of citizenship. That if you wish to live here, you must have wala with one of the Arab tribes. You must carry their name. So a lot of the non-Arabs began doing that. And you see this kind of strong Arab supremacy in early Abbasid culture as well. And then it starts to wear down. Because the Abbasids really, you see, what they did was they realized that in order to move forward, we need these non-Arabs, and they needed structures there. So a lot of the administrative structures came from the Persians and from the Turks and from all these other, and by Turks I don't mean modern day Turks, but obviously they are still part of the Turkic people, but the original, I suppose even today the Turks are originally from like the Turkic people, the Turkmen, perhaps by Mongolia or that part of perhaps China or Russia today, that came down. So Turkish people even today are not originally from, I mean, maybe they've mixed in, but they're not originally from the Middle East. Their language is not related to any language in the Middle East. It's related to just the Turkic languages, which is, you know, either very far eastern, Western Asia, or like parts of maybe modern day China and things like that. So, and I'll tell you a story actually. There's a brief summary. I'll go into it in more detail on another occasion, but there's this legacy and a whole narrative of the early Abbasids and their relationship with the Persians. So there was this family known as the Baramika, okay, and those of you that are familiar with Sham, with modern day Damascus. So when I studied in Damascus in the late 90s, early 2000s, there's a place there called Baramika. It's in, I mean, it's not central Damascus, but it's towards there. I mean, people will know where it is if they know Damascus. It's where they had all the passport offices and things like this. So Baramke, what they call it today, is named after the Baramika. And the Baramika were these people, this Persian family in the time of Harun al-Rashid. And when Harun al-Rashid was growing up, there was this, they were the descendants of this Zoroastrian priest called Burmuk or Burmak. Now Burmak was somebody who served a kind of official position within the Sassanid Empire, the Persian Empire. So he was familiar with administrative structures. So when the Abbasids took over, he also, whether he converted to Islam, some people, you know, that's discussable or debatable, and his children definitely converted to Islam. And they were very familiar with the administrative structures, and they were brought in by Bani Umayyah, by Bani Abbas. And because of the way they knew how to organize these kind of registers and set things up and have different departments and ministries, and so because they did that with the Sassanids, and the Sasanian Empire was an empire that spanned an incredible length of time, so they had a wealth of experience. So so you have Yahya al-Barmaki, and then he has children. You know, you've got people like Ja'far al-Barmaki and these other there's many, they're kind of offspring and cousins. They become so close with the Caliph, and that they have access to his palaces. They walk in, walk out. They are like family. They grew up, I mean, they help him against coups, military coups. They save his life on several occasions. They were very, very tight with Harun al-Rashid, and especially Ja'far al-Barmaki. He had such a bond with Harun al-Rashid that, I mean, it was borderline, was it even one questions whether it was homosexual. I mean, it was such a tight bond that they would do things like they would do crazy stuff like both wear one long thobe, one kind of shirt. I don't know what kind of brotherly love was going on there, but they would wear like one kameez, both of them. As in at the same time. What is this? Both of them penetrating this this shirt. So they would wear this shirt and they would just walk around in the palace and in his room, and they had this strange brotherly love going on, you know, this one. And he was so tight with Harun al-Rashid, was the Caliph, with Ja'far al-Barmaki, and he was like, I mean, he was like of a similar age, grown up together. But then you had the whole this whole family, Alu Barmak, which was like, there were so many children and their children and cousins, and they were all in administrative positions and positions of power. And then, just like that, one night, Harun al-Rashid sets up a series of events that came to be known as Nakbatul Baramika, the tragedy of the Baramika. And in that night, he wipes them out one by one. Seriously, it's a very stoic and brutal tale of love, friendship, brotherhood, and betrayal. It's just amazing, and it's overwhelming, when you go through it. It's all done within this night. He has one or two of them that were the top, like Yahya al-Barmaki and one, two others who was the fatherly kind of figure, has them put under persistent home arrest. So they kind of arrested, and then they put in some held in captives till they die. But most of them, he has them all killed off, and nobody's quite sure why he did it. And it's amazing, the sudden turn of events, as the kind of how tragedy befalls suddenly. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامِ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Allah, Allah, Allah. That there's... What's that? Subah ke takht nashin sham ko mujrim tehre. Humne pal bhar mein takhton ko badalte dekha. Nasibon ko badalte dekha. Right, so there's a poem that people who were on thrones, by nightfall they were wanted criminals, that within moments we saw the destinies of people change. That such is this dunya, people, such is this dunya. But yeah, it's a tragic, if you're ever interested and you have a bit of time, read up and check out this Nakbatul Baramika. It's always a great tale, and it's part and parcel of Muslim history now. Why Harun al-Rashid did that? Some people feel it's because he felt that they were encroaching upon his power. I think that may have had some truth. Some people said it's because Ja'far was destined to marry his sister, as in it was Harun al-Rashid who set it up. He was to marry Harun al-Rashid's sister. I think her name was Abbasa or something, and everything seemed good, and he's the one who set it up. And some people say he couldn't take it, the thought of it, of this non-Arab marrying his sister. But I don't know if that's actually how much sense that makes, because he was incredibly close with Ja'far. It wasn't, and then he had him killed. This love, as somebody said, ye jo rishte hain, ye khoon baha kar hi khatam hote. These relationships can only be set free by releasing blood. Well, that's some fascinating aspects of Muslim history. Right, so what's going on? Let's take a look at some questions, people. Somebody said any stories about... Let's leave some stories for now. That's enough. The Nakbatul Baramika. You could make an amazing series, seriously, just out of the Nakbatul Baramika. Allah. And it would be a bestseller. What is going on, people? What is going on? Let's take a look at some of the questions bothering mi gente. Let me just bring this up. Hide the password, the password. In this day and age, the phone. Everything's documented as it is. You're like... Muhammad ibn Muhammad Khalid, mind if I send you some essays for correction? What, like just some A-levels, or you mean just your... You're like, what the hell, I can't be bothered doing my homework. I know, let's send it to Mufti. Just messing, Ustad, of course. I don't know about correction, but I'll be happy to take a look. Robin Mahmood Salam Mufti, hope all's well. Yep, shukran, jazakumullah al-khair. Have you studied ADHD holistically? No, I've not studied it holistically. We have studied part of it with, as part of our psychology degree a few years back, a good few years back. But no, I mean, not a specialist in ADHD or anything. What is going on? What is going on? Does the Quran verse in Surah Nur on the subject of hijab speak more about covering the jabe than covering the head? See, I have covered this previously. Pun intended, huh? Covered. Hijab. You see, not going into too much detail, but I have done this in the past. I've covered it in much detail, and I will again to some extent in the future. But hijab, if you're going to just look at the Quran and the Sunnah, you will not find anything on, you see, because this, first of all, the term hijab in and of itself is a modern term. Okay, hijab meant a barrier. So in the Quran, when the term hijab is used, it doesn't mean the head covering, which we today are calling hijab. People for most of Islamic history never would have known that you meant hijab by that. So if you could time travel a few hundred years in the past and you said to some scholar about the hijab, I mean, unless they could just gather by the context what you're saying, that word does not mean the head covering. The head covering is called a khimar in Arabic. This is a recent modern term, so the 20th century probably, so it's very recent, referring to the head covering as the hijab. That said, is there anything in the Quran and Sunnah that clearly speaks about the head covering? The truth is there isn't. There's nothing explicit in the Quran nor in the Sunnah that speaks about the head covering. So you have got right, so there is nothing explicit in the Quran or Sunnah. You've got the verse in the Quran in Surah Nur, which speaks about covering the jabe, the bosoms, the kind of chest area for women, because the jabe meant a kind of the slit. So it was because that's which is then also used for a pocket, because a pocket was in essence a kind of slit. You slit and then you'd create a pocket. So similarly, so the dress was kind of created with a large cutout here, so you could kind of, and then you could see a considerable amount of cleavage. So the Quran speaks about covering the bosom, covering the chest area, and it mentions the term use the khumar bi khumarihinna. So the women, a lot of the Arab women did used to wear khimars. So the way they would presumably, here's a towel. If I'm to use this towel, I've got a towel here today. So Allah. So presumably women would cover it like this, so they would do that kind of like wrap it like that. So this was about bringing this over and covering the kind of chest area with it. So just ruined my hair. Right, so this so the point was about bringing this round, what was just kind of just hanging at the back there. Now the question is that was because Allah says, you know, that فَلْيَضْرِبْنَا بِخُمْرِهِنَّ, that let them kind of use their khumar and cover the bosoms. Does this mean that having a khumar, or having the khumar, or the khimar is singular, khumar is plural, not to be confused with khamar, which means alcohol. Otherwise, that would be totally different if you say, huh? Should cover their bosoms in alcohol. Yani, ho kya raha? What is going on? They're like, okay. That's a complete misreading of the verse. This is why Arabic muy importante, you know. So so you have khumar, not khamar, right? So the khumur, is the khumur in and of itself an obligation? Or is this just circumstantial, just circumstances? As in, I gave the example before, imagine I was to say that, let's just say as an analogy, totally different, not to do with hijab. Let's just say, as an example, if we were going through a place and I said, right, people, hide your jewelry. You know, this is a bit... It's a tricky... Let's just say there's a lot of thieves around. And if I was to say, right, guys, anybody wearing expensive watches, cover them with your sleeves. Right, cover them with your sleeves. Would this mean... So let's say now somebody gets hold of my statement 200 years from today or 500 years from today. Would they understand that I was saying it was necessary to have sleeves, to wear always clothing with sleeves so you could cover the watches? Or could one equally take the watch off and put it in their pocket? Right, so this, in this analogy, the kind of tools at play here in how you're analyzing a text are the same thing here. That when Allah is saying cover up the bosoms with the khumur, what if is Allah saying, hey, make sure you have khumur? Or is he just saying cover this up? What if you could cover it in the future with different mechanisms? Sounds a bit high-tech there, but different methods. Like what if now, you could use buttons and other things and, I don't know, get creative. So that is an interesting discussion. So really in the Quran was Sunnah, there definitely isn't anything clear and established about covering the hair. That's it. And in the early generations of Islam, I think it's not that. There's definitely a culture in the early, like amongst the companions and early Islam, where women generally wore khumur, and they would, they would, even, because the men would cover their hair as well, because they lived in a desert, they would cover their face sometimes because of traveling in the sand and doing things like that. So the question is, that yes, in early Islam there was this kind of cultural thing, it was there. It was definitely common. I'm not sure everybody did it. And you can see some debate into the time of the Tabi'een and early, the Atba'u Tabi'een. So people saying things like Imam Malik, that the woman doesn't have to always cover her hair. In front of certain people she could uncover it. It wasn't like father-in-law, son-in-law, and also things like even certain servants that she could uncover in front of, and which is interesting. So you have this kind of, it's not settled in stone yet, but then within a generation it becomes the law, if you like. So it becomes the teaching that all women must cover their hair. And for about 1,000 years, it's been, the culture. So that's what I would say. So I hope that gives some explanation. So I have been asked on a few occasions, what do you say? In this day and age, there have been certain scholars that have said, look, it's not an obligation to cover the hair for women. You've got people like Allama Javed Ghamidi who said that. You've got a few other contemporary scholars who have said things like that. And I feel that they have a valid position. They do have a valid position. I would say, look, each to their own. You know, if there's women who cover their hair, you know, if we use the word hijab now, because that's what people use, who do this, it's a part of their identity now. I wouldn't say to them ever, don't do that. I would always say that's good. That's a good thing, because they, you know, it's part of who they are. And there's some women who don't cover their hair, and they would feel, I mean, some who just ain't interested in the discussion, and some who are but feel it's not an obligation. I would say that that equally is a valid opinion as well. So, you know, you're not, I don't feel it's like a you're going to hell issue kind of thing. So that's my understanding on these things, because there's nothing explicit in the Quran or in the explicit established sunnah, sarih and sahih. So it must be sahih and it must be sarih. There is nothing, no hadith that, you know, that is soundly established. So that means it can't be it can't be criticized, and it must be clear. So that's, I hope that's of some help. I have had on several occasions people asking me, and like I say, look, if it's something you're going to do, sometimes somebody asked me recently saying, oh look, I'm going to start donning the hijab. I will start wearing it. What do you think? I think fine, that's great, that's good. You know, if you're going to start doing it, I won't say don't, or, you know, something like that. I feel that that's, you know, I'd welcome that. But equally, if a woman was not wearing hijab, and by hijab I mean this head covering thing, I would say that what is clearly established in the Quran is the concept of modesty, and that's what seems to be emphasized explicitly by the Quran and Sunnah. So if a woman wasn't wearing the hijab, I would feel that that opinion equally has validity. So, and these are people's personal journeys through the faith. It's not for other people really to impose that on people, you know, and it's not really, you know, it's not really for, you know, for men to say to women that you should be covering your hair when you go out, and you should be, as in to force it. I mean, they could say, well, I believe you should be. Okay, fine, that's your opinion. But to enforce that, to kind of coerce people, that would, in my understanding, be categorically wrong. Categorically wrong. And you'd be doing much greater harm, in my understanding. And I think sometimes that it's bifold. It's got two angles to it. There is the angle that sometimes these men are then under guilt, because they feel that the religion says that she has to cover this. Because what happens is you have these other scholars who give these fatwas, because I said this is, I feel, in two, bifold. It's got two you know, sides to it. There is one side where people are just insecure men, and that, I think, personally, I think it's their personal, it's an embarrassing weakness, but many people suffer from it. They have, you know, many men are very insecure about women, especially women that they're with, that they feel, oh my god, nobody, oh my god, this woman, guy's looking at this woman, oh my god, oh no, she's gonna run away, oh no, she's gonna have an affair. They have this thing where they treat like, oh my, if a woman isn't fully covered up, then it must just be like full burqa, or it must just be prostitute. There's no bloody hell. It's like either she's like absolutely wrapped up in, I don't know, in duct tape, and it's like in bubble wrap. The Michelin, what's it called, that that kind of man, that robot or whatever it is, right? She's either covered up in bubble wrap, or she's from the horse of Babylon. There's just two different maqams, that's it. Right, beekeeper suits, yeah, exactly. So this is ridiculous. Now, so you do get a lot of people that are very insecure, and so they want the women to be covered up because they can't handle the woman out there, as in they feel, oh my God, even if a man looks at you, that means what the hell, you know, oh, they feel inept. And this is a weakness and a lacking within. They don't feel like real men. Oh, real men. You know, because it's true, they lack within. So what they lack within, they try to make without, you know, so there's that. And then what you have is some of these people get into positions of power, these insecure people, and they then guilt trip other people. So they say any guy whose wife is walking around without her hair covered is the youth, and he's like a cuckold, and he's, you know, it's haram. What he's doing is haram and an abomination, and God's la'na is descending upon him. And so you have this kind of cocktail of insecurity mixed with guilt, riddled with guilt. So some guys would probably feel really guilty, thinking, oh my God, I'm being cursed by God. So because of that, they right, people, watch your language, please. I don't know, somebody responding to somebody else. No profanity. Only I exclusively hold the right to that on my own on my own live session. Right, so some guys feel, if I don't tell my wife to wear this, or my sister, or my daughter, or my whatever, then I'm being cursed. So they're doing this out of a kind of a religious, burdensome guilt. And that is sickening. And the people who are burdening them with that are sick as well. Or they're doing it out of this kind of insecurity. So I feel both of these things are inaccurate and wrong. And this is why, you know, this is the problem with some of this institutionalization. It produces just hypocrisy, or it produces guilt. And Islam never came to do any of these things. You know, your deen, I say this time and time again, look, your deen, your way of, this deen of Islam, as the Prophet said, ad-deenu yusr. This deen is one of ease. This deen should complement your lifestyle, people. It should never impede it. It should never kind of be tripping you up. It should never be the thing holding you back. It should never be an obstacle in your path. It should be the nitro boost to you. It should be something that betters you, that propels you to achieve, to do things. It should comfort you. It should console you. It should not be tripping you up and making you burdened with this kind of weight of guilt and suffering. It should not cause you suffering. So if it is doing that, then you see, that's not the kind of deen, that's not my understanding of the deen. We would then disagree in our understandings, because my deen, the way I understand Islam, it complements my life. I don't see Islam as something burdensome. I don't see Islam as something that would trip me up or slow me down. And I do unfortunately see that with a lot of other people, that it does do that for them. And I get that that's their interpretation, but I think that interpretation isn't the one that the deen really came with. So I hope that's of some help. Cool. Somebody said Mufti Abu Layth al-Maliki. Wow, the full thing. Full shebang. Either that is sarcasm level 100, or that's a diehard fan. Either ways, eyes perplexed. So he's asked, can I give examples of how the deen can nitro boost your life? How it can boost your life? Yes, of course. You can take a message of wanting to achieve from this deen. you can take a message of optimism from this deen. The Messenger of Allah in Tirmidhi, it said that he would love tafa'ul, he would love optimism. And that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, you know, even if it was the final moments of your life and you're planting a tree, continue to plant it. So he was encouraging you to achieve. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught people. He said that when they asked, but you know, would God be upset, or would God not like that we spend on ourselves and we like to wear expensive clothes and expensive shoes? And the Messenger of Allah said, he said, no, you've misunderstood me. Inna Allaha Jameel yuhibbul Jamal. Allah is beautiful. God is beautiful. He loves beauty. The Messenger, the deen would help you in the sense when a person came thinking that asceticism, you know, coming in this kind of ragged appearance, thinking that somehow this demonstrates a religiosity. And the Messenger of Allah said to him, do you not have decent clothing? Do you lack wealth? And the person said, no, I've got money. Because the Prophet said, if that's your problem, then maybe somebody can donate something, because you look like, you know, in this ragged appearance. It's kind of like a hobo appearance, you know, like you're almost homeless and destitute. So the person said, no, I've got wealth, but I like being ascetic, you know, don't delve in the dunya. And the Prophet said, Inna Allah yuhibbu an yara athra ni'matihi ala abdi. If Allah has bestowed something upon you in terms of his gifts, and he showered you with them, he wants to see you in them. This is how the deen boosts you. It should boost your morale. وَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. Allah says, you know, that from the blessings of your Lord, speak of them. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And which of the favors of your Lord do you still deny? So I think the deen should not be something that holds us back. This is in my understanding. Okay, now maybe people have other perspectives, but I hope that's of some help. Mazari is in the house. Ustad Mazari. Mola Jat, you're in the house. Are you ascetic? Am I ascetic? Hell no. Why would I be ascetic? Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَنْسَى نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Don't forget your portion of the world. So since it's come from the Lord, I dived right in. I didn't want people to think I'm doing kufranu ni'mah, that I'm rejecting the mercy of my Lord. So somebody's asked about banning mut'ah. Look, I will do a detailed discussion on mut'ah on another occasion, but mut'ah is not haram in my understanding. Mut'ah is if a person was to have a low level, low commitment, let's say, relationship. It is obviously, it's going to be a sexual relationship. It's not going to be it's not going to be like, I know, ab is rishte ko kya naam de? I know, mama or bhanja. Uncle and nephew. That's not what I mean. So mut'ah is basically a temporary marriage. There's nothing, in my understanding, and this is in line with great scholars like Ibn Ashur, who's the great Maliki legend of the 20th century and a mujtahid in his own right. Him and other people of recent times. There's a Maliki scholar in Morocco who's authored a great book which I've got here somewhere. It's called Mut'ah Qira'atun Jadida fil Fikr Sunni. That it's a revised reading of the Sunni tradition, of the Sunni perspective on mut'ah. And it's very interesting because when you analyze the actual concept of mut'ah and you look at things like the hadith that allegedly prohibit mut'ah, they are very contradictory and they don't seem to stand. Now, I get the fact that I get the moral argument, I do get that. But in all honesty, the way I see it is, if it's two adults who, between themselves, have an agreement on what they're doing, who gives a damn what other people think? That's my perspective on these things. I do think that there's a lot of loaded kind of emotion against mut'ah, which is based on the anti-Shia sentiment. So because Sunnis in general will obviously not like the Shia, and the Shia have become known for the concept of mut'ah because they defended it, so the Sunnis have really hated on the concept of mut'ah, and they've ridiculed it, and they've made all these kind of insults about it and stuff like this. But in all honesty, the Sunnis themselves, we, in all our books of tradition, they say things like, oh, an-nikah bi-niyat al-talaq is fine. That you can marry someone and in your mind, without telling her, intend to divorce her shortly after. And Ibn Abdul Bar, who's a great Maliki legend, Mujtahid, in his Istithkar has a thorough discussion on this, saying this is absolutely permissible according to almost the outright majority of all Sunni scholars. So, and I would find that problematic. That that has a level of deception, I would feel. But mut'ah, at least they both agree. They think that, look, fine, this is how, it's just a short-term experience. It's just a it's just a, what do they call when you catch a bus, you have the day saver. Just a day saver pass. Just a few hops. That's what they call it, I think, on on buses, when you're catching a bus, right? So, but this is if it was mutual understanding. Remember, this is not to say, oh, people need to do this, but if people wanted to do this, who's to say it's haram? And I feel that it might even provide some part of a solution in the modern problem of whether a couple, Islamically, whether a couple are even compatible. So let's say a couple were to, because nowadays compatibility, how do you even know compatibility? And, an absolute spanner in the works is sexual compatibility. How do you know that? So there's a solution, I think. Right, so maybe I should open a website offering mut'ah, and so all people could kind of get on there. It could be like a mut'ah bureau. Your pass expires. You can buy a pass and it expires within a certain days. Well, cool. But I don't see the big deal, because nobody's, people that get worked up about mut'ah, one, if I'm going to be honest, I think that they're just jealous against the Shia. I'm just going to be honest. I think they just hate on the Shia because of, one, sectarian hate, and two, because they're just jealous that they wish they could do it. Three, I think, look, from the Sunni perspective, there's so much evidence that it's not haram. And it's very difficult to prove it haram. So, and the fourth most important point is, nobody's saying you have to do it. Nobody's saying you have to do mut'ah. If a person wanted to do it, and a dumb thing that people say, and the Salafi, this scholar I spoke of, this Maliki contemporary, his name is Ibn al-Azraq, and he has a debate on YouTube about this with Sheikh, what's the Salafi Moroccan scholar, that Sheikh Fazazi. But anyway, he's debating him. It's on YouTube about mut'ah, and then that Salafi Sheikh says, and this is the dumbest of things. Oh, okay, if you believe mut'ah is halal, he says to the Sheikh, okay, I'll do mut'ah with your daughter. I mean, what a despicable. You see, that's like saying, oh, just because you believe nikah is halal, getting married is halal, okay, marry me your daughter because you believe in the concept. I mean, what a dumb statement. I mean, you know, it's like, is that how you argue? Oh, so you believe this is halal, so, okay, let me do this with that's... So that guy says to him that, look, he says that, he responds by saying something like, look, first of all, he says that just shows how pathetic you are. And secondly, halal or not, even if this was a regular marriage, he says, I'd never marry my daughter after you. Because he says you're just an idiot. So the point is that, look, this is not some kind of, truthometer that you measure the truth by saying, oh, if you believe this is okay, all right, so how about, if that's how it worked, it's like, okay, Sheikh, if you believe oral sex is permissible, well, there's only one way to find out if you truly believe it's permissible. Well, so, I mean, this is not how logic or reasoning works. So well, may the Lord have mercy on us. Lord of mercy. Right, so, people, let's take a look at some other questions. What's going on? Right, I haven't checked the... Oh, look at this. Bloody hell, I forgot to stop. It's still going on for my exercise. It hadn't stopped yet. Right, let's take a bit of a rapid round, and then Daniel Steve said, Mufti, do you know hoverboards don't exist? I know, I just fell off one. My foot is recovering, I hope. I think it is fractured, I think. But it's recovering. It's strange. You know, you only start realizing your vulnerabilities after you break something. You're like, oh, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Insan has been created weak. It's like that. There's that meme where I don't know if you've seen those clips where it says human beings are incredible. And you got one guy doing this, and he's doing like all these backward backflips, and some guy jumping off a cliff and doing this, and some guy jumping off buildings and landing like this, and somebody parachuting, and somebody jumping through a bunch of things, and it says human beings are incredible. And then you fracture or hurt a part or pull a muscle or sprain something, and it's like 5 years later it's still not quite the same. Well. Who are you going to have a convo with next on YouTube? Let's see. Who do you propose? Right, okay, so I'll tell you what, let's move to Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. Alright, so those of you that have just tuned in, people, click like, click share. We will now be addressing Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. Right, Bismillah. Allah, Allah, Allah. ए बर के तजल्ली क्या तूने हमको भी मूसा समझा है. There's an Urdu poet. He says, oh, divine, speaking to the divine kind of, I suppose it means lightning, but in this sense, it's not just the kind of divine manifestation. He says, do you take us to be... See, the old poets, they were very daring in their expression. He says, do you take us to be like Moses? He says, मैं तूर नहीं जो जल जाऊं जब चाहे मुकाबिल आ जाए. Allah, 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 Allah. He says, I'm not Mount Sinai that I will collapse. Whenever you want, manifest yourself. Allah, Allah, Allah. जज्बाए दिल गर मैं चाहूं हर चीज मुकाबिल आ जाए मंजिल के लिए दो गाम चलूं और सामने मंजिल आ जाए. Says it's all down to the passion, the unbridled passion, people. He says if you have that, you will achieve anything. All you have to do is take 2 steps towards your destiny. And your destiny will be the destination in front of you. Allah, Allah, Allah. Right, so let's move to our Qadhi, judge, our judge friend, Yasir Qadhi ji. Allah, Allah, Allah. The zombie destroyer, people. The zombie slayer. Sheikh Yasir, aka the zombie slayer. So what is going on? So Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, what I'm going to do is tell you a bit of the backdrop, and then a bit of the controversy on him taking a few digs at me. Yep, at me, yeah, upon pe attack. So what is this about? The contradictions in his statements. We're going to take a little look at them. So those of you just tuning in, you may like and share and spread the love, people. Spread the fitan and fasad. Right. So what's the backdrop? The backdrop is that not so long ago, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, whilst going through his behind the scenes, this part is my perspective, that I feel that Sheikh Yasir Qadhi may be going through a bit of an existential crisis. Obviously, I'm not so sure that he's admitted to that, or maybe he has, but I feel that he wants to break away from. I feel that he does not believe in a lot of the things that he's actually expressing. Right? He's just not being true, like many people. You see, the thing is that even hypocrisy, you see, should be done with standards. You know, it should be, a person should still have integrity. That's as the poet says, मैं पेशावर फरेबी हूँ, तुझसे मोहब्बत नहीं करता. You know that मैं तुमसे मोहब्बत नहीं करता. That that I am he says I'm a fraudster. I'm a fraud. The person openly admits. He says that by profession deceive people. I'm a Romeo con artist. मैं तुमसे मोहब्बत कर नहीं सकता. That I can't, I'm incapable of truly loving. At least he's being honest. He's being honest in what he says. There's an amazing line in that poem where he says मैं साफ कहता हूँ Mujhe tumse nahi ulfat. He says, I say very clearly to you that I don't have any true connection or feelings with you. Faqat lafzi baatein hain. He says, these are only superficial words. Main tum pe mar nahi sakta. He says, I can't die for you. Allah, Allah. There's a kind of an admirable quality in the brutal honesty that the poet portrays in मैं पेशावर फरेबी हूँ मोहब्बत कर नहीं सकता. Anyway, coming back to this discussion, the problem is that many people, they have these double standards, you see. So they struggle to, they preach something, but they can't really believe in that thing themselves. So I feel that Sheikh Yasir Qadhi has also reached that kind of a stage in his life. Now, recently he had some discussion, not so long ago, where he spoke about Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and he expressed that how he is now incapable of accepting a literal understanding of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, or the traditional, let me reword that, the traditional understanding of Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So what is Ya'juj and Ma'juj? Ya'juj and Ma'juj are, nobody is truly sure, I guess. If you take a very, the perspective of scholars coming through the ages, were that these were some kind of human-like creatures that will emerge at the end of time, that they may be trapped behind some kind of a barrier, and when they do emerge, they will, wreak havoc on Earth, that they will completely destroy the Earth, and they will be from the signs of, the apocalypse, of the end of time. Right now, so Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, now there are verses in the Quran referring to Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and Ya'juj and Ma'juj doesn't actually mean something, like it's not a clearly meaningful word in Arabic, so it's not quite sure what the word means. It seems to be a Ya'juj and Ma'juj, so people weren't sure. This is why it was like an elusive term. It seems to have been an Arabicized term, so it's perhaps not Arabic in origin. So some people felt maybe these were two tribes of people, and then there's this story that maybe they were these ancient tribes that were trapped behind a barrier by this person called Dhul Qarnayn, and these people every day try to escape from this barrier. They are incapable of doing so. However, towards the end of time, they will finally overcome this insurmountable barrier, and they will be unleashed on the earth. وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ, as the Quran says, and they from all directions pour forth. Now, and there's havoc and chaos on earth. Now, the traditional perspective was that they were these strange-looking kind of people, or whatever they were. Some people felt they were humans, maybe slightly deformed, and some people felt they were maybe some other kind of creation. Some people felt they were the Turks, which is such a random, and some people felt they were the Chinese, which is so stupid, right? So, nevertheless, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, recently discussing this, came out with just being true to himself, said, look, I can't accept that. It doesn't make sense, because there are no millions and millions of people, or billions and billions on Earth that are undiscovered. Our contemporary geography has mapped out the Earth for us. There is no great barrier behind which these people stand. Therefore, we can't accept this the way it is. He then went on to give some interpretations. He said perhaps this could be a metaphor for just chaos on Earth. It could be, as some people have said, maybe it was the colonialism and things like this. And I've said as well in the past that does hold a very strong interpretation for me, for it being the kind of colonial phenomenon that humans went through. And then he gives this other interpretation where he says, Okay, I didn't come up with this, but I was having a discussion with these students of knowledge, and they came up with this. And even though it sounds really strange, but it ticks all the boxes. They could be zombies. I don't know what kind of boxes that tick, like in need of psychiatric care, tick, mentally handicapped, tick. Just escaped from a psych ward, tick. Suffering from severe delusions, tick. I don't know what kind of boxes that ticked. Desperately in need of mushrooms, tick. Eligible for special benefits and welfare, tick. Right, so I feel that this is on YouTube, by the way. I think it is on YouTube. So you had a lot of people, a lot of Salafis came out, attacked him, including our good old friend Abu Ibrahim, the exorcist. Oh, people, the exorcist. Right, so if you remember a while back, the exorcist, or he did a refutation of me in which he quoted a da'if hadith. And I caught him, I catch him out, I said, da'if, da'if. It's so fun to catch a Wahhabi using da'if hadith. It's so fun. That makes my day, that. I'm like, just like a kid with a new toy, like I'm just so ecstatic. I'll be like, da'if, da'if. Right, so even even Abu Ibrahim has a YouTube video refuting Sheikh Yasir Qadhi on this whole zombies thing, and several other people have refuted him. People said, what the hell, and said to him, you've lost the plot, and then ever since, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi has been trying to justify. This one you can't justify. Yeah, this is one of those things you can't justify. Just own it now. Have you seen that meme of some guy where he's speaking and he just kind of farts? It's like some kind of, I don't know, it's in another language. I don't know whether it's Swahili or it might be Somali, or I don't know what language it is. He's speaking in a language and he just farts in between, and it's a viral clip, and he just says, Alhamdulillah, and he just carries on. He's like, well, damn. He's like, well, I'm just gonna own it now. But anyway, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, this one justification too hard, this one too hard. Nah. So ever since, he's been trying to justify this. He's been like bending over backwards and doing all these backflips and gymnastic aerobics and trying to say, well, I didn't quite mean it like I meant, come on, these zombies ain't that bad. Zombies, for God's sake, let me get this right. Let me get this right, people. He said, this subhuman, or humans being trapped behind a barrier on Earth due to our contemporary knowledge of science and geography, demonstrates that that's nonsensical. Therefore, it is more likely plausible that they will be zombies. Oh, God. Cha. Mian Yusuf, I am Mian Yusuf. The good old anecdote of the guy that everybody feared. He was some major scholar of Islam, and he approaches, and everybody's like, all the Mulvis are like, oh no, quickly sit up straight, do this. And then when they ask him to introduce himself, he says, he says, my name is, he says, people call me Mia Yusuf. Not Yusuf, Yusuf. They're like, acha, cha, 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 cha. So they just kind of get all relaxed again. That acha, cha, it's Mia Yusuf. Acha, it's not geographically fathomable and it's not rational. So, so it's zombies. Acha, cha. Today, no, drugs bad. You know, no marijuana. Today, heroin. Okay. यार ये हो क्या रहा है यार? This Sheikh Yasir Qadhi ji, this one not nice, you know. This one taking the mick out the listeners, you know. So that's Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. He's been trying to justify it since. So anyway, he then decides to have he does a podcast which he's just done, I think this last week, with the Mad Mamluks. So they have a podcast. And this podcast, now, you see, what he's trying to do is he's trying to also reassert that, hey, I'm still very traditional. Yaar, I is one of you, yaar. Arey yaar, main hoon. It's me. Anna. Right? So the thing is, he's trying to reassert himself as, guys, relax, it's still me, Yasir Qadhi. Right? So he's trying to justify and he's going through all these things. And part of, you see, when you wish to reassert yourself, so what do? Talk to me. Diga me. What do, people? Tell me what you would do to reaffirm your position amongst the people. What position would you assume? Not one of those positions, you know. What position would you assume? The usual Salafi Wahhabi position that I know, let's bash a few other people. The usual thing, let's declare a few other people heretics. So then, obviously, I've assumed a position of power. I've assumed a position of orthodoxy by condemning other people as heretics. So what he does is, they have this discussion, and they start saying, well, you know, nowadays there's a lot of people, you know, they're struggling to accept miracles in the Quran, Sheikh, people, and then they're like, not accepting miracles in the Quran, and they're like, and you're like, yaar, ye aapke piche se hawa kyun nikal rahi hai, yaar? Why the gas pressure coming out from, that side? Why? You're trying to figure out that what is going on here. Like, why is... So, and then the other guy on Mad Mamluk says to him, he says, Sheikh, there's Mufti Abu Layth, who says, my name, my name. You mention my name and you mention the devil and he appear, so I had to, obviously, so people say, oh, Sheikh, have you heard Mufti Saab? Have you heard what these people are saying? So I'm like, no way, no way, what? So I check this out now, and I can't bloody find the damn thing because honestly, I can't be bothered to listen to the whole, it's that long. But anyway, somebody, shukran, muchas gracias por ti, they sent me the exact location. So about, I think it's 1 hour, 13 minutes into it, he says, oh, people like Mufti Abu Layth, they deny certain miracles and they deny things like the virginity of Maryam alayhi salam. Look at that, saying it like that, like, that just sounds so scandalous, doesn't it? Even I was like, oh, yaar, what is going on? I was like, whoa, whatever, denies the virginity of Maryam. That just sounds so like I'm saying something so grotesque. So anyway, and then he says, oh, and they deny this and they deny these certain things, and so what do you have to say about this, Sheikh? So Sheikh, Judge Dredd, so Judge Dredd, Yasir Qadhi, Sahib, he says, well, you know, he says, look, I'm just going to be, he says, look, I like to, you see, we have to always look at the Quran or Sunnah. No, this one not nice. He says, Quran was Sunnah, very clear, you know, very clear. So he says, look, why doesn't, and he doesn't use my name, but he says, why doesn't he or these people, my kind, you know, them, your kind, right? Why don't they just declare themselves, why don't they just say that we're not Sunni? Why don't they just basically say we're not from Orthodox Islam, we're not from Sunni Islam, and we are Mu'tazila, which is an old deviant extremist sect. Why don't I just declare myself from that? And then we wouldn't have an issue. He says, you know, this is how you would, and then we don't have an issue with these people. I was like, acha, Humri cat or humpe attack. It's like, acha, Sheikh Mian Yusuf, right? So I was like, wait a minute, Yasir Qadhi ji. To start off with, first of all, first point. Last time I checked, let me check again. Yep. This one not your dad's deen, you know. Last time I checked, this wasn't your dad's deen. So, abhi jisko chaha, nikal diya. Like, let's chuck him out, let's chuck him out, let's chuck him out. This isn't Yasir Qadhi's dad's deen, is it? Is it? No. So, okay. Second point. Let me check the record. So, we checked the record, and interestingly, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi himself is a Wahhabi. Wahhabis according a Salafi, which are Wahhabis according to the majority of the Sunnis, are not Sunni. And it's people like me that say, no, guys, or everybody, these all should be kind of Sunni. Just let them. It's only a few, the minority, and amongst that minority is me that says, no, Salafis too should be considered part of the Sunni majority of Muslims. But the majority of Muslims, Sunnis, do not consider Wahhabis to be Sunni. Acha, are tu kon me kham kha. Acha. This one intriguing. So it's like one, a Wahhabi is telling somebody else to not declare themselves Sunni. So you're thinking, well, mind is confused. You know, as they used to say in some parts of India and Pakistan, they used to, you know, there's a slogan, Sunni Shia Bhai Bhai. Sunni and Shia brothers. So they used to say, Sunni Shia Bhai Bhai, ye teesri jamaat kahan se aayi? That, where did this third category come from of the Wahhabis? Now, not me. I'm actually quite inclusive. I say the Wahhabis as well are under the Sunni spectrum. But most Sunnis, no way. Most Sunnis categorically, the Ash'aris do not consider Wahhabis to be Sunni Muslims. So, to start off with, this is such an irony. Okay, let's put that aside. Of course, I'm Sunni. this thing of somebody asked here a question about Mu'tazili, just to define that. A Mu'tazili is an extreme extinct sect from early Islam. It emerged on extremist grounds that anybody, and this was the pillar of their creed, that any person who commits a sin is no longer a Muslim. But he's not a kafir. They came up with a purgatory state. They believed that there was this purgatory state called al-manzila bayn al-manzilatayn. Any Muslim who commits a sin is in that limbo state forever until they don't renew their faith. They would chuck them out of Islam, but they wouldn't declare them kafir, but they wouldn't accept them as Muslims either. This extremist sect that began with this as their core belief, so they have 5 key beliefs, and this is number 1, that you must believe this to be Mu'tazili, right? This sect, and then they developed other, that God is bound by certain structures and things like this. So just because later theologians, when they got into certain debates with Mu'tazila, so some of the Mu'tazila mocked some of the theologians for being thick. So as their defense, instead of taking the bull by the horns, some of those theologians, this is hundreds of years after the Prophet, by the way, this is like 400, 500 years after the Prophet. Some of these theologians, instead of saying, no, let's bring your idea, we'll meet idea with idea, they started to say, oh, you're mocking us because what we say is stupid. Oh, so you're using your aql, you're using your intellect. Ha 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 ha. So because some theologians started to do that, it created a problem which we're still dealing with today. That some Muslims think that maybe the intellect is bad, which is the dumbest thing anybody could say. Right, so okay, let's put that argument there. Let's leave that there. Let's return to Judge Dredd. Mia Yasir Qadhi. Right, so Mia Yasir Qadhi, he says that, okay, people like me for questioning certain interpretations that exist today should be deemed a heretic. This is his words, that I am truly, essentially by my essence, I am a heretic and I should not be part of mainstream Islam. This was his view. In the same discussion, and I plead with you all to watch this, just in case somebody thinks I'm making this up or I'm exaggerating. In the same discussion, he goes on to say, he goes on to discuss the Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Now, let's just pause before getting into that. He attacks me for saying that, oh, because I question certain things. Like, let's say, was Jesus born of a virgin birth? Now, all I said was that nowhere in the Quran does it explicitly say that Jesus was born of a virgin birth. The early Christians did not believe that Jesus was born of a virgin birth. This was something that later Christians believed, and it was made doctrine by the 3rd century after Jesus. So this was not even early Christian belief. And the Bible mentions no such thing. And this thing about the prophecy that I think the Gospel of Matthew refers to, the prophecy of Isaiah, where he says that the young maiden will be with child. They translate it as virgin. The actual original word, Alma, is not necessarily a virgin. So, whereas Betul in the Jewish Bible is a virgin. So that's interesting. They don't use the term virgin. Alma often was a virgin, but it just meant a young maiden, a young lady, a young woman. That's what it meant. So now, coming back to this, in the Quran it does not explicitly anywhere mention that Jesus was born of a virgin birth, and I've got a detailed video explaining that if you watch that, and there have been many great ulama of Islam, especially of recent times, that have spoken about this. They've revisited, they've looked at it in depth. People like Allama Tamanna Imadi, who wrote on the topic. People like Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari in his tafsir Urwatul Wuthqa discusses this in depth, explaining that, look, there's nothing to say that the Quran simply, when the angel appears to Maryam alayhi salam and says that you will have, gives her glad tidings, and she says, but I've not been touched, and he says, but the Lord has decreed. But the angel appears to Abraham, gives him glad tidings when he says, but my wife has now attained the menopause and she's of an old age. And he says, well, the same thing to Ibrahim. He appears to Zachariah, where he says, my wife is barren, and he says the same, infertile, and he says the same thing. It did not mean that there was no natural method that took place. It didn't mean that they were all kind of there was no father involved in any of them. So Abraham is not the father. It's just only it was only from the mother. Nobody said that. But with Maryam alayhi salam, people took this because it was the prevailing Christian doctrine at the time. Now, Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari looks at this in depth. His teacher, Maulana Inayatullah Wazirabadi al-Gujarati, he has a detailed book on it as well, called Uyun Zamzam fi Wiladat ibn Maryam, regarding the birth of the son of Mary, where he speaks that, look, the Quran doesn't actually say this. The Quran one may say that it implies, well, one could infer that, that's true. You could equally infer that at the time, the husband of Mary, everybody believes that Mary was married to Joseph, that the husband of Mary was just not interested in intimacy. He was not an intimacy inclined individual. And then he became that he was not ma'il this way, but he was as part of the divine decree. So he changes. This was the kind of, if you want to call it, a miracle. Now, my point was that, you see, when he mentions that, people like me, like Mufti Abu Layth, are saying that, look, certain things go against science or go against reason. Now, I want to ask here, what is science or reason? Reason is the ability of a healthy mind to pass judgment, especially based on evidence. Okay? Science is our observation of the world. It's our observation of things around us, whether they are forces, whether they are atoms, whether they are causation, elements of laws within physics, of thermodynamics, or whatever. It's observation of what is around us. Okay. Now, this is what we call science. Yeah. Now, keep that in mind. Now, let's return to Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, Judge Dredd. He goes on, now once he finishes that topic, he goes on to discuss once again Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And he then says, but because of our knowledge of contemporary geography, we know that this medieval interpretation can't be true. So we need to reinterpret it. Wait a minute. Ooh. Because of our knowledge of contemporary geography, the world around us. So we're revisiting an interpretation. Acha. Dal Mudil! Heresy! Isn't that the same thing that you just said a moment ago, that this guy, for saying that something goes against science or the laws of physics or against reason, he is definitely a heretic and outside of the fold of mainstream Islam? Because he said that, we need to revisit these interpretations. Ah, acha, but when you do it, it's okay because, oh, you're doing it based on geography. Acha, 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 acha. अच्छा ज्योग्राफी डिपार्टमेंट में आ गए हैं. अच्छा, हमको तो साइंस डिपार्टमेंट में जाना था. अच्छा, this is favoritism, you know. Like geography, okay, science, no. Acha, acha, Mia Yusuf. Right, so it is laughable, the hypocrisy of that discussion, because Yasir Qadhi then spends elaborate kind of time and discussion. He has an elaborate discussion on justifying his position in saying, look, this is actually, this is still fine because I'm basing it on, because I'm not the only one. He said, I'm not the only one to interpret because my teacher's teacher had interpreted. So as in Sheikh Sa'di, Sheikh Sa'di had interpreted Ya'juj and Ma'juj, who's from the 20th century. Acha, cha, cha, cha. So ye jo chache hain, so these chache who I quoted, when I quoted Maulana Allama Tamanna Imadi, who's also from the 19th century and the 20th century, and when I quoted people like Sheikh Wazir Abadi, who's from the going in also 20th century, and Abdul Karim Athari from the 20th century, when I quote people like Ibn Ashur, who was the Sheikh al-Islam of the 20th century, when I quote these people, or Muhammad Abdu, who was from the 19th century, or you've got other scholars, they're not acceptable. Because they're modern. Acha, cha, cha, cha. Magar aapka chacha? Sheikh Sa'di. When it comes to Sheikh Sa'di, because he's the teacher of Bin Baz and Uthaymeen and these people, all of a sudden everything is rather dandy. Oh. This one, my friend, is not nice. This one double standards. So I seriously was like, wow, did anybody just notice the utter hypocrisy in that discussion? Because a segment of it was just like, oh, these people are heretics and should be nothing to do with mainstream Islam because they say we need to revisit certain rulings, certain interpretations, even though they have precedents, but they have just 20th century and 19th century precedents. Okay. Acha, acha. But my chacha, but my uncle, Mitio, this Sheikh Sa'di, because he's the teacher of my teachers, because he's interpreted, acha, but this interpretation, it's okay to revisit because geography, acha, acha, oh, geography. Oh, this one impressive, geography. Where would we be, people, without geography? Science jaye bhaad mein, but where would we be without geography? I want to know who Sheikh Yasir Qadhi's secondary school geography teacher was. Whoever he or she was, they left an impression. Ooh, a tantalizing impression. But geography tells us that this interpretation we can revisit. Acha, oh, acha, acha, acha. Aap karen to mahan. You do it and you're pious and mashallah, savior of Islam. Hum kare to harami. What's that? Main karun to sala? What's the... But anyway, so this is the whole... this is the problem. So the hypocrisy was just I mean, at best it was laughable, but it was disappointing because this is what you're dealing with. And it's amazing how, that's it, मैं करूं तो साला character ढीला है. This is the problem, you see, it's just, I'm a soft target, that's the thing, soft at heart, soft at heart. Because they just look at me and say, oh, but look at him, look at his goatee, look at his earring, look at this, look at that. And by the way, I've got a detailed video on the earring, you can watch that. So I'm a soft target, easy target for them. But I am who I am openly. I'm not hiding behind, I'm not using a fake veneer, pretending, hey, because, mashallah, when I was sitting with Sheikh Uthaymeen, and I was sitting with Sheikh Bin Baz, and I was sitting with the... look, first of all, let me just tell you something, people. Let's real talk, yeah? Yes, today, I accept that these Salafis are anti-terrorism. Yeah, I accept this. But it was only yesterday that these people gave birth to terrorism. This terrorism that we're seeing today, a huge part of it is only from these Wahhabis. Let's just be honest, like real talk. Sheikh Bin Baz or these, Sheikh Albani, Sheikh Muqbil, these people were part of the Jama'atul Muhtasibatul Salafiyah only in the 70s. This isn't that long ago. 70s is not such, so they used to go around, they were like the Taliban, going around bullying people, beating people up, setting up these kind of plots. Now they did allegedly dissociate themselves, but because the group, the Jama'atul Muhtasibatul Salafiyah, right, went on to hijack the Kaaba. Do you remember Juhayman with, was it 1979, the hijack of the Kaaba, where they hijacked and took the held people hostage? You can type it into YouTube. That movement, Juhayman, who they caught and killed, he was a nobody. Juhayman, later on they declared him to be the Mahdi or whatever. But if you look at the founders, the key people in that movement, you can type it in on YouTube, on Google, bring it up. You can buy books on it now. The key pioneers were people like Bin Baz and people like Sheikh Albani and Sheikh Muqbil, and these people were the founding fathers of that movement. All this ISIS, these people were praising ISIS. Now they're speaking against that. Do you know, somebody sent me this, you can find this clip on YouTube, yeah, where a caller embarrasses a Salafi cleric live on TV. So there's this Sheikh, I think his name's Arur or something, but this Wahhabi Sheikh, he's on live and he's speaking and he's condemning ISIS. Fair play. He's condemning them, saying, look, these people, absolute wrong, deviant, whatever, so on and so forth. So somebody calls in. It's a live Q&A show. And the person says, Sheikh, he says that you're condemning ISIS and everything, which is good. But he says, but it was only, 1-2 years ago that you were praising them. So the Sheikh says, oh, Anas atalattaf bik, I'll be kind with you, perhaps you've misunderstood me. Hada kithbun wa buhtan, this is a lie. I would never praise. Hati burhanakum, bring your evidence. Ain ad-dalil. So the guy, the caller, had obviously come prepared. He says, not a problem, Sheikh, right here. You want the Burhan? And he plays the clip. So you can hear the Sheikh. And the clip that you can find on YouTube, they've actually put the other clip in that clip. So he himself, the Sheikh, the Saudi Salafi Sheikh, is saying, he may not be Saudi, but he's definitely Salafi, he's from the Gulf, right? So he himself is saying that, our brothers from ISIS, 99 out of 100 are decent people. It's only 1 out of 100 that is messed up. And he's saying this. He says, oh, ikhwanuna, you know, these people, min al-dawa'ish, oh, tanzim al-dawla, from the dawlatul islamiyya, 99% 99 out of 100, you know, they're not that bad. It's only 1 out of 100. And then this sheikh says, cut him off, cut him off. You see, these people are, I'm not saying today they are the terrorists. They're not. But the Frankenstein problem we have, they have played a significant role in producing that problem. Why do you think Sheikh Yasir Qadhi was such a hothead in the late 90s, early 2000s? Because he was himself, at that time he was fresh. He was a production. Now I'm sure Sheikh Yasir Qadhi has moved on from these kind of fanatic ideas, but the point is that these teachers that he still goes on about are still, at the end of the day, those very people that germinated, that, you know, they fertilized this movement. They, you know, it's their sperm, metaphorical sperm, right? You know, and how far does the apple fall from the tree? So these things, you know, it's interesting how these people assume such a lofty position in Islam and they dictate to others. And so, yeah, so I hope, so these are some of my thoughts, people. I know I kind of went on for a while. Whoa, is that the time? Guys, let's wrap this up. It's been awesome. I hope that's some food for thought. I wanted to clarify that, look, yes, I do feel that there are certain interpretations that have existed for hundreds of years. I'm not the only one. Several great scholars of our recent times have said they need to be revisited because they're not the clear expression of the Quran. They were an interpretation by certain people. And yes, reason, the voice of reason is always paramount, and I do give primacy to it because through it we can understand that the deen of Islam has validity, that it is, to us it holds true. And I'm not the only one that does this, but what I won't do is, oh, I interpret things, but when you have one interpretation, call you a deviant, and then but my own, I kind of say, oh, but this is totally fine, I'm doing this. But you, when you interpret, you leave the fold of mainstream Islam, which is just reflective of that fanatic past. You know, that fanatic extremist past of excommunicating people, chucking them out of the religion, but now you're not chucking them out of the religion, you're just chucking them out of mainstream Islam. Not that it was your dad's deen to begin with. Anyway, people, as always, it's been an absolute. Sheikh Adnan, I think it's Arur, or I'm not sure how, but it is Arur. If you type that in, AROUR, it should bring it up. Hopefully on YouTube or Google. People, let's call it a wrap with that. Take very good care of yourselves. Remember me in your kind du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. People, over and out. Assalamu alaikum.